have 1 minute. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Before we get started tonight, I'm gonna ask our good friend and pastor Chris Wrigley to lead us in prayer tonight, and after that, I ask everyone please stand for the pledge. Yes, sir. You'll have to hold that button down, Pastor.
Okay, all right. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this day, as it is a day that you have made, and therefore we will rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you for your loving kindness. Thank you for the blessings that you give us each and every day. Thank you, Lord, for our mayor and our city council. Father, they are servants, that it's evident that they have a heart for our community. I pray an abundance of blessings upon them. Help them, Lord, as they represent you and the citizens of our great city. May they do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with you, our God. Father, I pray for continued unity in our church, or in our city, and in our churches, in our city and its leaders. Father, that you would heal where recent division and turmoil has existed. And Lord, that we may acknowledge that you have worked for our good. And so, Father, I pray for the unity of this council and for my fellow citizens. And as we move forward, may we always follow your hand that is sure to lead us and guide us to green pastures and still waters. As a people full of faith, we say thank you in advance. Thank you for the ways that you have worked and the ways that you will continue to work in and through these that I stand before tonight. Thank you for your continued blessings upon Mount Pleasant. May all we say and do be done in love as we seek to glorify your name, the name above all names, Jesus, in whose name I pray. Amen.
All right, again, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our agenda. First item on the agenda is to consider approval of the May 17, 2024 special session, May 21, 2024 regular session, and May 28th, 2024 special session minutes. Council, if we had a chance to review the minutes, the floor is open for motion on this item.
I had a chance to review them. I make a motion to approve.
I make a motion to second.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Councilman Hegman, second by Councilwoman Redfern. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Vote is unanimous. We'll now close item 1 on the agenda. We'll now move on to item 2, which is our public comments. The City Council welcomes citizens' participation and comments at all City Council meetings. Citizens' comments are limited to 2 minutes out of respect for everyone's time. The Council is not permitted to respond to your comments, and the Texas Open Meetings Act requires that topics of discussion deliberation be posted on an agenda not less than 72 hours in advance of Council meetings. If your comments relate to a topic that is on the agenda, the Council will discuss the topic on the agenda at the time that the topic is discussed and deliberated. At this time, if we have anyone that would like to speak, please come up and state your name and feel free to address the Council. Ms. Debbie,
I
you
should
might,
know
you
that.
might want to pull it
I
down.
should know that. My name is Debbie Corbell. I live in the city of Mount Pleasant. And while I was still employed with the city, one day the manager brings in a new company to replace Absolute Technology that had worked with and handled our IT issues. The company that was brought in was Datamax, with ties, of course, to the Metroplex area. But also another person showed up to act as a liaison between the employees and computer company. So here we went again with the can't wait to spend more taxpayer dollar attitude. And of course, none of us needed that middle person to relay the messages. But under the Freedom of Information Act, I requested the last 24 months of Absolute Technologies payments and the last 24 months of Datamax recently. I looked at the 24 months of Datamax, these last ones, because of the COVID that came in when they first were here, the technology that was added, such as that. It's my understanding that Absolute Technology was paid $65 an hour for regular time when they were here. A copy of their contract was not found, but I did get the payments, which totaled $305,810 for their last 24 months. And looking at the payments and contract for Datamax, which I did get their contract, the hourly rate, they started at the same time Absolute Technology left, was $100 an hour more. Their contract started at $164 an hour, and the past 24 months, it totaled $653,280. The fact that in a 24-month period, there was $347,470 difference. That tells me that is something we need to be looking into and maybe look at competitive pricing and bidding, because that's a lot of difference in the contract. And the other thing I'd like to say is that I would ask the council to consider purchasing a plaque to put out at the Mount Pleasant Sports Complex that honors those who were sitting at the time of the conception of that park, the ones who actually got the funding for it, carried out the planning sessions and all of that. They are not honored out at that park like they should be. That council, that mayor, that manager, all need to be recognized for their vision and their development of that park.
Can I ask a question? Can you tell me who is Absolute Technology and who is Data?
Absolute Technology was the company that was here before.
Yeah, we can get those things for you, Kelly, who the players are there.
Thank you, Ms. Debbie. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak at this time? All righty, at this time, we'll go ahead and close public comments. We'll move on now to item 3. Item 3 is a discussion and approval of the interim city manager's contract.
So I reviewed with the city manager and outside counsel. We walked through agreeable terms. I don't know if we need to go through the contract as a whole, but you know, compared to other candidates, I would say it was reasonable and fair, and looking forward to, if approved by the council, for Greg to start.
Okay. Well, this is actually a discussion, so, I mean, before I go into the, making the motions to vote on it, I have to close that discussion. I just want to make sure that if council had anything that they wanted to, discuss, then now is the time for that. If we're gonna go ahead and, go without the discussion, I can close that discussion, and we can go ahead forward a motion.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions about the contract?
I do not. Okay. All right, well, like I said, this was a discussion, so if no one else would like to speak on it, we'll go ahead and close that discussion and open the floor for the action to take a motion and vote.
I make a motion to vote for it.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion made by Councilman Hagman, second by Councilman Hinton. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 That vote is unanimous. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Greg Nyhoff, which will be coming up as our new interim city manager, to have a few words.
You're clapping. I'm clapping too.
Well, I think it's a round of applause addressing.
Thank you, first of all, for a unanimous vote. That's always great for someone to have in my place as city manager, that everybody's on the same page. That's a great start. As the pastor mentioned, unification. That's a very important part of that. I want to say I'm honored that you did select me, and I'm honored to serve you, and I will be, I pray I will be a blessing with 28 years of experience as a city manager. My first 14 were a city almost this size and a city smaller, and then I've had experience in larger cities, and I just, I do pray that I can help you and help the staff and the community as a whole as we go through this time of transition. And as you do look for a permanent city manager, I can assist you with that as well. And so I'm very excited to be here. For the audience, I mean, I've had a chance to interview with you. You've had a chance to discuss certain things that are challenges that we face here in the city. And you did ask me if I was up for it, and the answer was yes. And I do look forward to that. Challenges are also opportunities to really get better and be better and serve our community better. So I look forward to that. As far as who I am, I moved here 2 years ago. I moved to the countryside just outside of Mount Vernon. And of course, this is where I do a lot of shopping, going to the restaurants and the like. My wife and I moved here, my wife of 42 years, who has stood by me for 28 and then some more of being a city manager. So she's a part of every community we've ever been to, and she would have loved to have been here. She had a very severe accident about 4 weeks ago, and I know she's watching today, so I will tell you she would be by my side if she at all possibly could be here, and I love her dearly, and I told her I'd tell her that publicly. So we moved here a couple years ago, and flanking me are my two bodyguards, just in case it gets rough around here.
You need new bodyguards.
Yeah, I do. Pastor is a bodyguard. I'm not sure how that works. On this side is my son, Luke. And Luke and I, and Juliana is sitting in the back row, his wife, and Cindy, my wife, moved here 2 years ago together. And Luke now lives in Mount Pleasant, and Luke owns a business in Mount Pleasant. And so this is our home now. And what better way to feel like I can help and use what experience I've had in my own hometown. And so I'm really excited about that, and I'm grateful for that. And then I wanted to just say I've asked the pastor to come with me. So he's already prayed, but he's my pastor as well. One of the things that happened coming here was we were welcomed by Trinity Baptist, and I'm sure there's a lot of great churches, but Pastor Chris certainly and I have had opportunities to speak. And I wanted to just say that God's plan is in action for this community, and it happened with me. I was not looking for a job. I've been in blue jeans and cowboy boots and snake boots for the last 2 years. I've been riding a tractor, but I met with the pastor from time to time, and he would say, "Hey, are you keeping tabs on what's going on in Mount Pleasant?" I'd be like, "No, I've had 35 total years of that. I'm okay just, mowing mowing some grass and that type of thing. And he would ask me, and we'd talk about it a little bit. And then it wasn't a couple weeks ago that we talked a little bit about it, and I thought, well, there's a transition going on in the community. There's new council members. That can be a time of anxiousness, and everybody's gonna have to pull together. And I called him and I said, hey, you know the mayor. We've talked about that before. Would you give him a call? Just see if we can have coffee or something. And that happens, and it just so happened that day or the day before, your former interim that you had already approved had stepped aside for personal reasons. And I'm thinking, I got the pastor calling the mayor, and I'm going to meet with him. And so we met with the mayor, and he asked for my resume. And by the way, he was great. He didn't interview me at all. He did not ask any questions, which is very appropriate for him to do, because he wanted all of you to have that opportunity together. And so we met, I turned in my resume, and you selected me. So for me, I believe that I'm supposed to be here with you all, and only through God's grace will I be able to really do a good job for you. And I believe that together we can do that. And to my staff, I look forward to meeting all of them. I actually started Wednesday morning after you said I could have this job, so I wanted to make sure you did this tonight so I could get a paycheck for the first week I was here. And then the community, I would like just to say that my first responsibilities, the council has discussed with me some of their very, very high priorities here. Certainly the fire agreement with the county is a high priority. Certainly the budget. I think we heard, I've been to a couple meetings, and there's questions about, expenditures. The budget's coming up. You'll get an audit tonight, which will tell you and give you information on that, and I'll let you draw your conclusions about that. But the budget will certainly be an area of priority. But for me to propose a good budget to you, I have to understand how the organization works and who the people are within the organization. And so that's where I will spend my time. So people are already asking and calling, hey, can we meet with a city manager? I ask for patience from the community, for let me get a very good handle on what's going on internally. I've always said my house has to be in order before I can go outside and really engage with the community. And I think that that's the priority of all of you. And so with that, I have asked my pastor to say a few words. And for me, I've asked him to just say another short prayer for me in serving you and this community. So thank you again, and I look forward to sitting right there.
Again, my name is Chris Wigley. I have the privilege of being a resident here in Mount Pleasant myself, and privilege of serving as lead pastor at Trinity Baptist Church. And so I want to just take a moment and speak on behalf of Greg. But before I do that, I just want to say part of Greg being here leads me to be extremely excited about the future and the direction of our city. Each week I stand and herald a message of hope that is found in the gospel and a relationship with Jesus. And flowing from that personal relationship with Jesus is an opportunity to speak hope and life into every facet of someone's life and someone's community. And the people of Mount Pleasant are people that are made in the image of God, worthy of respect and worthy of love and great leadership. I'm excited about what our community can be and the role that each of you have in bringing that kind of hope and leadership at such a crucial time. I'm excited to have Greg Nyhoff as interim city manager. While I am very impressed by his resume, I need you to know that I'm way more impressed with his character. I have the privilege of knowing Greg personally. I know him as a man that loves Jesus and desires to use the giftings that God has given him for the good of our community. When a man is made of that kind of stuff, God's hand is surely upon his leadership. And perhaps what you don't know of Greg, and you didn't know I was going to say this, is his incredible wife, Cindy. I get to call her friend too. Cindy, in and of herself, is a pretty amazing lady. She has experience working with liaisons from all over the world as our former U.S. national volleyball team's liaison. What's more is that even their son and daughter-in-law, who I also call personal friends, are amazing people who have invested in our community. We have in this family not only a gifted leader, but we have something incredible. Things that towns like ours rarely get to experience. And so for that, I'm extremely excited about Greg and his leadership at such a crucial time. I'm excited because I believe that nothing happens by accident. I believe in the sovereignty of Almighty God that even works behind the scenes, ensuring our good. God never forces his will upon us, but he invites us to be a part of his work. Incredible work. I'm confident that you, my friend, Mayor Craig, city councilmen and councilwomen, many of you that I get to call friend as well. I believe now that my personal friend Greg Nyhoff, you've been appointed not by accident, but by God's hand. You've been appointed to a great task at an amazing time. I believe that yours is the task to bring hope to our community, direction, strong character, and an opportunity to our city. Now is the time to lead, and to lead at God's direction. In the Old Testament book of Esther, a book that never mentions the name of God, not once, but certainly demonstrates his activity in our lives and in the world, speaks to the opportunity that now stands before each of you. Esther found herself, by God's hand, in a position of influence. She was nervous, uncertain, and often lacked confidence in herself and what she should do. But she seized a moment, an opportunity that the book of Esther teaches that she was placed, quote, for such a time as this. City leadership, I believe this is your time. I believe the activity of Almighty God through the vote of the people of Mount Pleasant. You are here in this place, in this moment, for such a time as this. I urge you and join me in heralding a message of hope, working to glorify God in all you say and all you do. And know that as I pray for you, not only now and already to begin this meeting, I will continue to pray for each of you, mentioning you by name, asking God to strengthen you, asking God to give you resolve, asking God to give you wisdom. The book of James says that if any of you ask wisdom, he should ask of God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. I pray the wisdom of God upon you as you lead our community in unity and for the glory of God. I believe that if we do that, Mount Pleasant will be a place that will be filled with hope and opportunity, a place where God is glorified, a place where people are pointed to a relationship with him and involve a relationship with him. And I believe that place will be a beacon of light, not only in our own community, but in all of our region. A place where people will want to live, a place where people will want to do life, a place where people will raise their families, a place where they will come to trust Jesus as their Lord and Savior, a place that will make a difference, not only in Texas, but in the world. Thank you for your leadership. Now is the time to lead. I love you.
Thank you, Pastor. This time, Mr. Nyhoff, you can come take your place. Thank you. I think that deserves a round of applause. All right, it is a pleasure to have you here, Mr. Nyhoff, with many opportunities I've had for improvements, and with the leadership and advisement of the council, I think we can head in the right direction. We'll go ahead at this time and close item 3 on the agenda, and we'll be moving now on to item 4. Item 4 is a presentation of the fiscal year 2023 financial audit and consider electing 2 members to the audit committee. Ms. Elaine? Okay. You may have to pull that mic down, Ms. Elaine. I know we very rarely see you in here, but you'll have to hold that button as you speak. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City Manager. Tonight we have John Watson from Brooks and Watson Company Audit Group to discuss or present our fiscal year 23 financial audit.
Thanks, Elaine, Mayor, Council, City Manager, for the opportunity to be in front of you tonight. You all should have the bound report in front of you. If you flip that open, there's a handout of the presentation that's on the screen over here, as well as a few letters. With that, I'll get into the presentation. This presentation's over the year ended September 30, 23, so keep that in mind as we go through this information. The audit was conducted consistently with U.S. Gas. That's generally accepted auditing standards. U.S. Gas is a three-phased approach. The first phase is the planning phase. That's where we try to focus our efforts on areas we find most susceptible to risk of error or fraud. Field work is where we actually test those areas. We vouch to underlying evidence. We confirm with third parties. We determine reasons for differences and propose audit adjustments. And that's the conclusion and reporting phase. I'll prepare the report in front of you. And a few letters as well. That's a U.S. Gas audit summary. The report itself, there are 8 sections to it, or sorry, I think that's 7 actually. The first section is the introductory section. That includes a letter of transmittal from management, describes financial results, where the city is headed. The next section is the audit opinion. That's a letter from us, your independent auditor, describes whether the financial statements are consistent with U.S. GAAP or if there are any modifications. We'll look at that on a slide to come. Management's discussion and analysis follows that. Shows current year results compared to prior year, explanations over significant changes year over year. Basic financial statements follow that. They're presented on 2 different bases of accounting. One is full accrual, government-wide statements. That has all your long-term debt, capital asset activity. And then fund level, which is more consistent with how you budget. On the governmental side, it's presented on modified accrual, so kind of a near-term inflow-outflow. Back of your report are the required supplementary information section. It's got your budget to actual schedules. We'll take a look at that. For your general fund, where the majority of your activity occurs, your pension schedule, so you can see how well funded your pension is year over year. We'll take a look at that as well. And then the very back of your report is the statistical section. Has a lot of trend data. You can see where the city was 10 years ago and where they've come today. So great place to look if you want to see financial trends for the city. So that's everything within that bound report you all have. I mentioned toward the front of that report, the independent audit report, there are 4 types of opinions that you could receive from us: unmodified, modified, disclaimed, or adverse. We are offering an unmodified opinion over these financial statements. That is a good thing. That is the highest level of assurance the CPA can provide. It basically means there are no material modifications or errors in this report that we're aware of. So that's great. Some highlights. We did this as a comparison year over year so you can get a feel where you were last year, 9/30/22, and this year, 9/30/23. Just some key benchmarks here, working top to bottom. Your citywide cash and investments were about $67 million in 22. You can see it decreased by about $10.6 million in 23, a lot of capital outlay. Net position, $67.5 million in prior year. Current year, $65 million, about $65.7 million, that 1.8 decrease. Governmental fund balances went from $10.3 million down to $6.187 million, a decrease of around $4 million. The fourth item here, unassigned fund balance in the general fund, went from $1.3 million to $1,073,000, which is a percentage of 9% of your annual general fund expenditures down to 7%. So that's with respect to your total expenditures for the year. So ideally, this is a recommendation from the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association. They say you'd like 2 months plus, and they kind of give a qualitative, don't really explain the plus side, but they want at least 2 months. That's their advice. So 2 months would be closer to 16%, so you're under that. So a good thing to note. Proprietary fund unrestricted net position went from about $2.7 million to $2.3 million, so decrease there of $376,000. Operating income In prior year, 2.5 million, current year was 821,000. We'll look at these numbers in a little more detail. Citywide debt did decrease by 1.7 million. So your debt principal payments exceeded debt issuances for the year. Net pension liability, pretty significant increase. We see here, went from 3.2 million up to 10 million. We will look at that change, and I'll give you a picture of why that happened there on a slide to come. Okay, so starting with governmental activities, this is revenues, so just the governmental activities. This does not include your utilities. Total governmental revenues for the current year were 19,489,000. Prior year was 18,788,000. Sales taxes make up 35% of that. That's 6,753,000. Prior year, it was a little less, 6,435,000. Property taxes make up 26%, 5,021,000. Prior year, 4,336,000. Fourth bullet down, charges for services were 14%, 2,774,000. Prior year, it was 2,187,000. Franchise and locals taxes, 12%, about 2.4 million. Prior year, it was closer to 2 million. Royalty income was 6% in the current year, 1,171,000, and prior year was around 1 million. Okay, so that was the revenues. Now this is the expenses, still staying with the governmental activities. Another pie chart here. Governmental expenses in the current year, 23,133,000. Prior year it was 20,274,000. Your largest functions here for expenses, first of all, at public safety, makes up 49% of your governmental expenses, about 11.3 million. Prior year was 9.4 million. General government, 17%, 4,010,000, and prior year, 3,573,000. Parks and recreation make up 17%, about 3.8 million. Prior year, close to 2.9 million. And public works, 15%, 3,555,000. Prior year, close to 3.9 million. All right, so that was that full accrual look government-wide, and then I mentioned the other bases of accounting, modified accrual, which are at the fund level, which is what we show here. So the general fund is in the left column. That's where the majority of your governmental fund activity resides, and then we've got the street fund to the right of that, and then non-major, a combination of your non-major funds in the third column from the left there. So what we look at here, just looking at revenues, less expenditures, and less other financing sources. So just working left to right in the red circle here, we see a negative net change in general fund of 3,896,000. We're going to look at that on a different slide. The majority of it is transfers out for the ARPA funds to house that basically to within a special revenue fund until the city determines how to utilize those funds. In the prior year, it was within general fund. It was shown as restricted, so it wasn't going into your unassigned fund balance, but moving it over to the special revenue fund makes best sense there. Street fund utilized more expenditures than revenues, and that's the negative 919,000 there. And then the non-majors had a surplus of 703,000, and that led to the net overall decrease there, far right in the red circle, of 4,112,930. Okay, so I mentioned the budget to actual, and there's budget to actual schedules on all your special revenue funds and your general fund, but the general fund is where most of the activity is, so we'll spend our time there. In the left column here, we've got your final budget. So that's your original budget plus all budget amendments passed, okay, relative to the 9/30/23 year. In the middle column is your actual results, and then on the right column is the variance between budget and actual, okay? So circled some things here. So bottom left, we've got a break-even budget, revenues equal to expenditures and other financing sources. So that was the final budget after all budget amendments. Working back top right and down, revenues exceeded budget by 227,000 for the year to 27,826. Expenditures exceeded budget as well by 592,158. So that led to that net overage there of 364,332. The other financing sources, that's a negative about 3.5 million. That is primarily that transfer of funds over to the ARPA, as I mentioned earlier, okay? That feeds into that negative overall change there, circled bottom right, close to 3.9 million. All right. Got that. All that information was over the governmental side. This is the proprietary fund side, the utility funds, water and sewer, and your airport fund. So what we're looking for here is making sure that they're paying their own way. We can see water and sewer, operating income, 1.3 million. Airports operating at a deficit of about 479,000. Then you've got some non-operating income and expenses, and some transfers out and transfers in. Ultimately, you've got a net change in net position at the bottom here, circled in red, of 1,121,000 for the water and sewer fund, and for the airport fund, it was a deficit of 276,000 for the year. All right, just got, I believe, 2 more slides for you. I mentioned the pension and said we'd take a closer look at that. That was an increase year over year. So at the left column here, it's indicated as 12/31/22. That's the last time an actuary looked at your pension, so that's why it's dated that rather than 9/30/23. But that is the most recent pension data. So we can see 10,049,216. That was the same number on the prior slide for the net pension liability. The number right next to it is 3,265,390. So we see that increase that I mentioned earlier. I circled the reason why, and that's the net investment change for the year. So circled in red, you see for the current year, you had a net investment loss of 3,438,761. So they're anticipating a 6.75% return year over year, but that projection, there's going to be peaks and valleys. This was a valley this year. You can see the prior year, the return there, 5.3 million, and looks like it was positive each year, but this year was negative. So when you anticipate 6.75% return and you actually get a loss, you have these swings in the pension, and that's what happened. That's what led to that $10 million, it's around $6.7 million increase. Just a couple notes on these, the bottom bullets here. So what does this mean? One of the metrics we look at and your actuary looks at is how well funded is it? How does your asset relate to the liability? What percentage is it? Your funded ratio is 82% as of the current year. Okay, it was 94% as of the prior year. Average nationwide in 2022 was around 78%. So you're still well above, or not well, I guess, 4 percentage points above average. Okay, and I expect an improvement in 23 with the stock market. So that's where it's at. And where do you feel it? That's kind of the second bullet. You feel it in the budget by your contribution rates. Okay, so TMRS is adjusting contribution rates to try and keep you in a well-funded position. You can see that kind of by these percentages here. 3 years ago, you were contributing 14.8% of your payroll, and in 23 is 15.56%. So may seem small, but when you think about a percentage point of payroll, it's significant money for your budget. So that is all I have to share about pension. Okay, so that's everything about the report and the audit, and then there are a couple letters. These are standard communications for an audit. The first one discusses that we are independent of the city and some other standard communications. It's got the audit adjustments listed in there, so you're welcome to look at that. Nothing really unique there. Pretty common to have audit adjustments, and again, those are listed there. The other letter relates to internal controls, and another standard communication. As we walk through processes and identify things, we're going to communicate that in the form of a letter. We also discuss with management and audit committee for this city, which is great that they do have an audit committee. Not all of them do. But yeah, so we've discussed that. Had a chance to meet Mr. Nyhoff earlier this week and catch up with him as well on as much as we could in a short period of time that he's been here. So with that, I know it's a lot of information, but happy to open it up to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. At this time, council, we have any questions? Now's the time to ask. Okay, council, there's no questions. I wanna thank you for that presentation, sir, and we will go ahead and, move on for a motion to approve. I'm sorry. We can go ahead and close the item, and there's no voting on this item. I glanced down at the wrong thing, but, if we have no questions, we certainly appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Would you, go ahead, Candace?
I was just gonna say, on this item also, you elect 2 members to the audit committee.
Okay. I don't believe we have the audit. No, sir. That's something that you would have to request. Okay, at this time, the presentation is concluded, and we'll go ahead and consider electing 2 members to the audit committee. This time, anyone that want to nominate for these positions, floor is open.
I nominate Sherry Sproul and Carl Hinton.
I will need a second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion made by Councilwoman Redfern, second by Councilman Hagman. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 All right, vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda. Thank you again, sir, for that audit report. All right, at this time, we'll go ahead and close that and move on to item 5. Item 5 is to consider a pay request number 13 from Heritage Contractors Incorporated for the work at Southside Wastewater Treatment Plant improvements.
Mayor, Council, City Managers, Lenny Buck with KSA Engineers. What you have before you here is pay estimate number 13, and we do this once a month, so we're 13 months into this project for the wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation project. This pay estimate is for $2,417,335.80. We are about 50% through this project on time, about 39% on the money, and the end date for this project, just FYI, is like June the 3rd, 2025 right now. We have not included rain days into that calculation yet. We've been keeping up with them on a monthly basis, and we'll probably need to update you on that because there has been a little bit of rain, and we are working in a hole at a wastewater plant. So with that, this is essentially a $40 million project, and with that, I didn't bring pictures this time. Jokingly, the contractor told me that the drone was stuck in the mud, so so we don't have pictures for this go round, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain those.
All right, floor is open for questioning.
Yeah, what progress has been made, understanding there's been a significant amount of rain this month?
So they're still working on the clarifiers and the aeration basins, so they're placing a lot of concrete right now. And so that takes a lot of money at this time, as well as, you know, we're preparing to start installation of the mechanical equipment, so there's some materials on hand that are associated with this as well.
Another question on that. So if we're pouring concrete with the rain, any concern with the curing with all the moisture?
No, sir. In fact, in school, we used to place concrete under water to make it cure better, so that's not a big deal. But we are, you know, they don't place it when it's raining or when there's water standing, but as far as it getting wet afterwards, no, that's not a concern.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
All right, thank you, Lanny. I appreciate it. All right, at this time, we'll open the floor for a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to vote.
I second.
All right, I have a motion made by Councilman Hagman, second by Councilman, I'm sorry, Councilman Hinton. Madam Recorder, vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda. Our next item is item 6, which is to discuss and consider resolution 2024-6 repealing resolution 2023-14 availability of accident and health benefits coverage for council members, employees of affiliated service providers and their dependents, and expense reimbursement for council members, and possible resolution related to the same.
Yes, I brought this up before the council. Again, as I've been studying the city charter, I think most of the things go to the charter. And, I think the charter needs to be addressed, and I don't think resolutions will be what will fix that situation. So I've made a motion here, or I would like to bring it up for discussion, that we, dissolve, repeal, whatever, cancel this resolution. And for those that don't know, this was a resolution stating that council members can get expense reports, expense money, and be on the city insurance. So I think that needs to be addressed in the charter at a later date when we're able to vote on it. So that is what I'm asking the council to discuss.
All right, council, floor is open.
The only question I have, can we define affiliate service providers and their dependents? I don't really understand what that means.
Hey, Carrie, can you address some of this, please?
Jonathan, it's basically people that could do work for the city, not particularly city employees that recover, but independent contractors and people like that. That there's a statute that came in several years ago that authorized, that said yes, the city could include that on their health. But it's just people that are not regular employees, an independent contractor, maybe an IT guy that's out there doing something, or maybe Lanny decides that he didn't like KSA's health plan or something. You could make appropriation for that. That type of thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary.
Gary, if someone does like to get the insurance, do they pay 100% of that, or does the city pay part of that?
Well, on this particular, this resolution that allowed just for the council member, that member for I believe for the city to pay their health insurance. Now, family, I think that had to be reimbursed, but it just included the city. I might have to defer to Perla, but I think I'm correct on that.
Perla, could you come up, please?
Mayor, Council. So we have a Section 125 plan. So all the employees and contractors and anybody that we have on there, actually the city pays 100% of their premium, and then council or those independent contractors would actually only pay whatever the plan is. So for example, employee spouse would be $166.
Do we know how much today we're paying on that? Like what's budgeted for 2023 or 24, excuse me?
I believe that for an employee only is like $565 per employee.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any further questions? You go ahead.
Well, I don't feel like taxpayers should pay for anybody's insurance. It should be, if you want it, you pay for it. If you work for the city, that's part of your package, that's one thing. But council member, it's a position of service. And I also want to mention, when we first got here, they offered me a phone, $1,000 phone just for me. I turned it back in. I feel like it's more wasteful money, taxpayer money. And that's why we ran, to stop the wasteful spending. So that's what we're here to do.
Okay, and this is not just this is also contractors outside council members also that this health care stuff is identified, right?
This particular resolution that Kelly's speaking of is to just more or less cancel that and bring it back to square one and say no health insurance payable for the council. And then until you can formulate, I believe, some type of reimbursement policy that's acceptable to you, for example, your TML reimbursement, things like that, till you can formulate some policy, then more or less put that on ice too, till you can do that. Is that your understanding, Kelly?
My understanding of the charter, which I'm learning, and I'm hoping we can fix, is that this charter has been followed since 1948. And that the last time they voted on it was in 2002, I think 2002. There's a lot of loopholes. There's a lot of things that people have been kind of going around. It's not clear. So when you have situations where this is done after the fact, not ahead, but after the fact, I think this leaves room for error. So I would like to take it back to the way things were previously before this resolution, and then let us do it the proper and the right way by establishing something in the charter after we discuss it, and we leave it up to the people of Mount Pleasant to discuss and vote on. And I think at that point, then going forward, even though it might not be us, it might be the council in the future, it would be in the charter.
One more thing. Carrie, any kind of concern of liability or any risk assessment around voting yes on this and it was canceled based on the current health plans that are in progress?
I think it would only be, Jonathan, whatever, things like COBRA, your extension on that or whatever, it would be subject to whatever, which that supersedes and preempts whatever, but whatever is required under the law on that particular thing, and then Pearl will get determination from our carrier on that, but that would be the only thing that would stand in the way, would be that, but we can't do anything about it. If they can offer them COBRA, so be it. That's the way it is.
So no risk to the city right now if we voted a yes on this?
No, I think Pearl has done some research on that too, and she may want to address that, but that was the only concern when I saw it. I'm thinking, when I started with COBRA many years ago, that's probably got to be out there, but she had a couple other questions, and I'd let her address those.
So in order to terminate the plan, we would have to give council member currently on the plan a 90-day notice so that they have an opportunity to elect other coverage. And then our plan, even if it terms like tonight, June the 3rd or 4th, then it would actually term at the end of the month in September, because we've got to give a 90-day notice, plus it'll end at the end of the month. But anything else, I mean, if the council elects to vote to dissolve that, we can do that. It's just, understand we'll have to have those council members covered through 90 days.
That's awesome. Thanks for doing the research on that.
Also, Carrie, could you speak on what the current charter states about this accident on the healthcare charter?
Well, the current charter is silent specifically to healthcare. It just talks about a salary. That's what it talks about. And you're going to get into matter of somatics, and what does that include? Benefits, is health insurance. But there was a statute, I will admit, there was an intervening statute that came in a few years ago that said cities could offer it to outside, make it available to it. So, it's your charter, and the city, it's kind of like the Constitution of the United States. We will interpret it until the courts tell you different, whatever, but that it's not specifically addressed in our current charter about health insurance or that type of thing. It's just what you define salary. You know, you hired this gentleman tonight, you'll say his salary is X number of dollars a year. But does he say, well, I got so much in retirement, I got so much health insurance, I got so much this, that, and the other? That's where the semantics come in.
All right, thank you, Kerry. We have any further questions on this item as far as the discussion goes?
Well, I think this also has to do with the expense reports as well, and I think as far as keeping everybody on the right page, I think basically, like if we were going to a TML conference, that's expendable. You can turn in your expense reports for that, but just running around town, I just don't think that that's something that we should do. And I think that's something that this resolution was adopted after the fact.
I'll just kind of second what Carl had said earlier is, you know, we are in a budget adjustment right now, trying to make sure that every dollar counts, and we have some challenges there and where we can cut, and this seems to make sense until we have the people vote on an adjusted charter.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, floor is open.
I make a motion that we go ahead and repeal the resolution.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion made by Councilman Hinton, second by Councilman Hagan. Madam Secretary, record a vote.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We will now close that item on the agenda. At this Okay. We will now move on to item 7. Item 7 is a discussion and possible direction related to possible city charter amendments for November 2024.
I haven't looked. Are they all in? Is the charter in our book? Okay.
This is for the election.
Yes. Well, I mean, are the details in there too? Okay, because I've got my copy. Candace and I sat with an attorney. Cannot remember the gentleman's name, Frank. And we went over quite a few things that I consider cleanup, because again, there's not been a vote or anything that's happened to it since 2002. And there's been a lot of changes within the state that's happened since then. So Frank had gone through to do a lot of cleanup as far as wording. And so what we would have in the packet, you can see that he's got comments. He's got some red marks and some things on that. There's also some things in there that we, I think, need to discuss and start making a plan for in regard to what we just repealed. Additions as far as living in the city of Mount Pleasant, residents, things that are going on that we've found that there have been some loopholes over the last couple of years. And then I'm hoping that we will have an opportunity to have a vote on it by the people in November. So looks like we will be heading into an election for another council member here in November, and it will give us an opportunity then for the people of Mount Pleasant to vote on some of these changes that hadn't, they're kind of, some of them are out of date and some need to be clarified.
I will say we have Frank on Zoom if you have any questions for him.
Hi, Frank. I'm sorry. Hi.
All right, Council, we have any?
If I may, I with regards to the proposed changes, the great majority of the changes that I have proposed in the charter for your review are to update the charter, to remove obsolete language and to incorporate the new laws and remove the old laws that are no longer in play. That's the great majority of the changes that I've included in the draft. those can be voted on one ballot proposition if the council were to decide to move forward with an election. However, in my discussions with the councilwoman and the city secretary, there were a couple of other modifications that they would like to have seen that are included in the charter that would have to be voted separately. For example, currently they're under Section 2, Article 6, Terms of Office. That would be a substantive change. Currently, the mayor and council may serve 2-year terms until his successor elected. There is no term limits. What is being proposed is to impose no more than 3 consecutive terms. And then once that maximum has been served, a person can sit out a 2-year term, and then be eligible to run again. Also, however, if a council member serves 3 consecutive terms, they would then be allowed to immediately run for mayor and serve 3 consecutive 2-year terms. There would be no requirement to sit out if a council member is running for mayor. So that would be a matter that would have to be voted on separately by citizens, that is something the council wants to forward to the citizens of Mount Pleasant. The other change that's a substantive change is under Section 3, vacancies. Currently, it says all vacancies shall be followed by special election. Well, when the charter was written, cities could hold elections 6 times during the year. You're now limited by state law to only hold elections in May and November. So if someone were to resign in October, you could not call a May election because that election has to be called by August. That seat would be vacant until the following May. You would not have a person in that seat. So what this does, if it says there are vacancies of more than 6 months, then you do have to wait to have an election to fill that spot. But if the vacancy is less than 6 months, then the council would have the opportunity to appoint someone to serve in that vacancy. So that's for consideration for the council to consider possibly adding that to the election. And again, that would be a separate ballot proposition. And then one of the things that was discussed was the fact that currently, state law requires someone to live in the city 6 months before they're able to run for office. So I added the 6 months to Section 4 qualifications. That's not a substantive change because that's just simply complying with state law. But I did add language that would require is that the council may adopt an ordinance requiring documentation for candidates and office holders to prove they meet residency requirements. One of the questions that was asked during the meeting where we were coming up with what items to add to the charter was, well, how can you prove someone is a resident? Well, state law and cases out there basically says you have to really rely on what that individual says because they sign an affidavit when they're running for office that you have to take their word. Some of my clients and some of my cities have now adopted ordinances where a candidate, when they file for office, have to prove either by utility bill or some other documentation that shows that they have been a resident for that time period before they're able to file for office. This language allows the city to adopt such an ordinance. It does not require such an ordinance, but it allows the city to adopt such an ordinance. And those really were the only substantive changes. The remainder of the changes that you find that are proposed are the requirements to upgrade the code into compliance with the state law and what the current state's laws currently reflect. And with that, I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions you may have with regards to the proposed changes, or if you want to give direction about possibly other charter changes. You have time to review. You have time to consider. The election has to be called by mid-August for the November, so you do have some time to review the current language as proposed.
I make a motion to,
Hold on. We're still discussing.
Well, what I was going to say is, based on what Frank said and what I had an opportunity to look through and read through, I would like the council, I would like for us to have an opportunity. Now, I'm still learning the terminology, if it's a workshop or when we need to get together, but to have us have an opportunity to read through this and look at it. I want you guys to be able to look through it as well. And that we can come up together, so then we can meet with Frank again, and that way the wording is correct before we ever get it ready to go to the election. So it's not so much that I'm wanting to make a motion that these things are here today. It's just I want us to be able to start the dialogue and start communicating about these things.
That would be my recommendation, is that the council get together to see and agree about how we move forward with what changes that need to be, along with our legal counsel, and what need to be changed.
that's what I was gonna say too.
All right.
So then I make a motion to, move this to the next meeting, executive session for review.
No, it's not a vote on it. It's just just get direction and discussion. So there's no voting on this item. It's just simply a discussion. So if we have no further discussion, we'll go ahead and close item 7 on the agenda. All right, item 7 is closed. We'll now move on to item 8, which is discussion and action on county city fire contract. Ms. Naha.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I certainly want to allow either of the council members that are on this specific committee to speak. I've been with the city now. I've actually worked for 5 days. However, understanding from day one that the city-county fire agreement has been very important. And so there's nothing formally to report. I just wanted to make a couple comments that indeed the two council members have been working diligently. We've almost talked every day. I have met with the county judge. I think I've looked through a lot of documents, and what I would say to all the council members is that this is something that has occurred since the 1990s, this service between the city and the county, that relationship, and it has worked. And I think to me, there's the council wishes that this service continue, and I believe the county wishes that to continue. And so at this point in time, I would say we're making very good progress. I think Council Member Redfern did ask and make mention that I would get a chance to review the documents. I have done that. I've had a chance to discuss with my fire department. Like I said, I met with Judge Cooper, and so we're meeting also with our counsel, our legal counsel, and we're putting together something to transmit back to them. And I would just say that to me, it is a benefit to both of those in the incorporated city of Mount Pleasant and to the county, and I do believe we're closer than maybe what some of the conversations that have had there. And I know this council wants a resolution. I believe the county does too. So I would say we will be, I hope we'll be able to solidify those within the next 2 weeks, and maybe we'll actually be able to present a contract that both sides will be agreeing with, move forward with us in the next couple of weeks. So that's a report, and certainly to my council members that have been appointed to this task, certainly welcome their comments.
All right, Council.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. That's in line with everything that you and I and Kelly have talked about, so thank you.
It's very, the only thing that I can say, and I'm thankful that you have been digging into it, because when we do receive a new draft, it seems like it's a brand new draft, brand new wording, brand new clauses. You end up having to circle and underline and circle and start over every time you get something. So I'm hoping that we can take what we've got and go forward instead of redoing. That's what I'm hoping.
We have any further discussion? I'm gonna ask, is that council, I mean, cause it's also saying an action item. Have you guys had a chance to review the contract, and are you guys ready to make any action on this item? If we're not maybe ready to make an action, then we need to, review it, so I'll need some input on it.
Well, the motion that I had made, last week, I had, I think, put that we would, by the 11th and or sooner, but I wanted to just make sure there was something on the agenda, because I want to make sure if the county's listening that they know that we're on it and that we want to do something and that we are working on it as quickly as we can. But at the same time, I just don't think we weren't ready for this meeting. I just wanted to make sure people knew that we're on it.
Okay. All right, well then, as far as action, we'll go ahead and table that, Carrie. So that there is no action to be taken. We just need to table this item further. So floor is open for the motion on that.
All right, make a motion to table it. Based on what Greg says, I don't have the date in front of me, but the 11th probably is not going to work. But 2 weeks from today, June 18th, to bring it back up to council for vote and or for an action and discussion.
I second.
All right, I have a motion made by Councilman Hagman, a second by Councilman Hinton. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. This item will be tabled into, I believe it's the 18th, you said? Okay, until the 18th of June. Okay, that concludes our agenda for the day. Again, yeah, okay. Yes, ma'am, I do believe it's going to be on the 14th. I'd have to look and see, but I believe it is on the 14th. Yeah, I mean, usually it's announced by the city manager's report, but he's just new in, so. But yeah, it will be Juneteenth celebration in Oaklawn Park on June 14th. Welcome the public to come out and enjoy the festivities. With that being said, any further updates on events coming up? Well, we'll make sure that we get that out. Thank you all for coming. At this time, the council is adjourned.